Hey everyone, we're having some
Hey.
technical difficulties here. So the scheduled post that you all have received a link to is, for some reason, we can't get it to work, and that's how energy works sometimes. So we're starting a new live post, and hopefully y'all get to join us here. We're going to talk about ghost. So yeah, we'll see if anyone will join us here. If not, the replay will be available. All right, so I'm seeing some faces joining in. Hey Jenny, let me know if it was easy to transition over to the live feed versus the scheduled post. But it sounds like the sound is good and you can see us. Yes, thumbs up. No.
Hi, Mom.
All right, so we'll start. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Let me actually do this first. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Great. Thanks, Jenny, for giving us feedback. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk about ghosts on this beautiful October full moon. The veil is absolutely thinning. So
yes, it is.
Good time to talk about ghosts. So welcome to you, and thank you for joining. We want to hear from you during this hour, so if you have your own real ghost story, feel free to chime in and leave a comment, and I'll be moderating. And also, if you have any questions for Cherie or myself, feel free to leave them in the comment as well, and I'll read them out loud, live. And a quick favor, since we're having such difficulties with the live feed, if you kindly, when you're jumping on, can share this to your feed, or if you have that special somebody that you normally would share that ghost story with, you can share them in a DM. That would be awesome. Because many of us have these applicable experiences, and we definitely want to make sure that, you know, when you're attending these events with White Nackros, we're creating a safe space for you to be here. You're not alone walking in the woods. We are here with you with the highest integrity and the highest intent. And we have already done our invocations, so there's a safe space for gathering everyone who's viewing this, listening to this right now, but also in the future. Yeah, so yay for gathering, and hopefully we'll have some more people joining us soon. Hopefully you have a cup of tea, a wine, maybe you're watching with a friend. I'm seeing familiar faces, so that's great. And a quick disclaimer, we're not here to convince anyone of anything they do not want to be convinced of. We're definitely here to have that safe space to share stories, but also to share information and to get answers to questions. I also want to point out that we are not medical doctors, surprise, surprise, and we will not be providing medical advice today. Talk to me later after a glass of wine. I'll jump into what I've mentioned White Nackros now, and I'll be introducing Cherie and myself. But White Nackros, so White Nackros actually it's a company that's launching soon, and it's seeded many years ago and have manifested into reality now. And I have teamed up with phenomenal spiritual teachers, Cherie Young, Amy McGee, and Colette Chase, and together we'll be providing products and services, free and paid services that assist you in experiences spiritual clarity and inner calm, no matter where you are in the world. So hopefully you will log on to whitenackros.com, and I'll type that up in a comment, and sign up for our email list, and you will receive all the goodies, the free goodies, and also be the first one to know when we launch. I see Jenny has already questions asking away. So without further ado, I want to say welcome again. My name is Erica Eriksdotter. I'm a spiritual teacher in interdimensional web working of white Nackros, and I'm going to introduce you now to Cherie, because what does spiritual clarity and inner calm have anything to do with ghosts? And that's what we're here to clarify a little bit more. And Cherie Young,
Yes.
You are a spiritual teacher of many things, but of white Nackros. You've been called a real Ghostbuster, but since taking the oath, basically, of doing no harm, as we have all done, you just joke and say that you have the most fantastic relocation program there is for discarnates and attachments and ghosts, what we call ghosts. And you cleanse spirits from houses, and we will talk about humans and animals, and we'll be talking that, hopefully a little bit, touch on that throughout this hour. You were born and raised in Washington, D.C., and she's a masterful interdimensional web worker and spiritual teacher. And she utilizes fearless compassion, connecting clients to their divine inner knowing. And she has assisted in alleviating numerous diseases throughout physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies. And she teaches healing workshops, both here in the United States, but also non-US, so mostly in Europe. She's also available for personal sessions and spiritual house cleansings. So we'll jump in, and while you're talking a little bit, I want to see if I can share this link with some other folks.
Okay.
So tell me how you first realized as a child that you were actually seeing ghosts.
Well, oh gosh, that's a great question. A lot of people actually ask me when I first saw a ghost. I can't remember ever not seeing ghosts. So, I think my first experience, I probably was between 2 and 3 of my conscious memory. And I remember I'd gotten out of bed, and I guess I'd had a bad dream, and I was standing on the staircase waiting for calling daddy, daddy, daddy. I just kept saying daddy until he would show up. And it was black, there were no lights on. But this other being walked up, and he was all white, and he was holding a club. And then I saw my father walk through him. And I just kept saying, Daddy, be careful, he has a club, he has a club. And the man just faded away. So that was one of my first experiences.
And you could tell then that it was not a real person.
Right, because he wasn't made of the stuff that we're made of, because my father, one, could walk through him, and then he just sort of dissipated, he just sort of faded away. Another time in Houston, I remember sitting at the dining room table, and again, it was very dark in this room, and there was a man suddenly sitting next to me. Now, why it didn't occur to me, I don't know. I remember he had a narrow tie and a nice suit on. He was an older man, and he had blue eyes. And he didn't talk, but he listened. And I was just talking that man's ear off. And you know what else I did in school? And then I got so excited because he was so nice. He just had a really sweet demeanor about him. Mm-hmm. So I ran into the kitchen. He said, Mom, I want you to meet my new friend. Come on in the dining room. And she came in, and of course, there's an empty chair there. Luckily, thank all the gods that be, my mother also she's incredibly psychic, and she absolutely understood that there was a presence there, even though she couldn't perhaps physically see him. So I think that was key too in my beginnings, having someone validate and not just tell me, oh no, you don't see anything. I don't know what you're talking about. I was validated all through childhood. So
we have a good question coming in here, which asks, when you say see, do all ghosts manifest in the same way? Do they always look like their physical selves?
wow, that's a great question. And and no, they don't. They don't. And also remember, each person has their own lens or perception of how they're going to receive that frequency. The people on the other side of the veil are the different dimensional makeup than we are, obviously. They can walk through walls. I can't do that. Can you? I've tried. I have tried. It hurts. So yeah, sometimes people report seeing orbs, little
circles,
just bubbles of light, different colors. You can see a wisp of someone. Yeah, and I've heard people report that they have messages from loved ones who have crossed over in the way of sighting a different colored bird repeatedly, a synchronistic thing like that. So yes, I think the presence of other people can be perceived differently from everyone's point of view is going to be different, and how they present themselves is going to be different as well. That's a great question.
We had a question submitted in advance. Amy wanted to know, why are people so attracted to the whole ghost hunting and haunted hotels and stuff like that? And especially in the US, it becomes in October, it's like on rampant. Everyone is selling tickets to anything that can be called a ghost or a haunting. So,
well, another great question. I think there's a part of us that is mesmerized and fascinated, and I think there's a part of us that really wants to know it, what it's all about. It doesn't really exist. I think there's a part of us that knows it does exist, that we don't just end when we lay down our physical bodies. And you see these haunted houses that you pay money to go in and have a tour, and yet if they're really haunted, these people are trapped there. They're trapped between the dimensions, and for whatever reason they can't remember who they are or how to get back to where they started, and some of them don't even know that they've passed. So it's quite possible, especially when they are boasting about very violent traumas that these people experienced in these houses, they're reliving this horrible trauma over and over again. I don't find that entertaining. I think it's very sad. If I were to go to one of those, I would do my very, very best to heal those people into their proper place in the creative order. But I think
you mentioned, you've said it before, and you might have just said it. Sorry, I'm trying to send out an email here for our crew so they can join us. But you've mentioned that it's like going to the zoo.
Yes, it's exactly like that. From my point of view, if you're going to go pay to be scared in a haunted house where ghosts are literally trapped and replaying the most horrendous, perhaps, moment of their lives, it's going to a zoo where all the animals are being tortured. So I'm not a fan. I don't recommend it. And it's a good way also to pick up attachments or folks that don't have anywhere else to go. You might bring some part of that energy home with you. So I don't recommend it.
Yeah. And if you do bring anything yucky home, this is a good time to just talk briefly about spiritual house cleansing, or cleansing a person.
Okay.
If you want to just do that.
So, well, I'll tell one more ghost story, but I'll try to keep it quick. That leads into the ghost cleansing. Okay. So when I was a kid, and my brother, who may be watching this, will verify, we had a haunted house at the end of our street, and we were very bored, as kids do get sometimes during the summer. And we said, hey, let's go to that haunted house. That sounds like fun. So we all went. I jumped in the window of this abandoned house, and the moment my feet hit the ground, I knew I needed to get out, and then it was dangerous. So I jumped back out. I got all my friends to leave. One of my friends actually saw the ghost and screamed her head off, went back to her place, and apparently the ghost had followed us there. Okay? Everybody was out in the street crying and screaming. I wasn't screaming. I was trying to calm people down. And then that was actually my first house cleansing. They wouldn't go back into their townhome until I went in, and I got the New Testament from my house, and I went into every single room and I said the Lord's Prayer. And she did not reappear. So, case in point, spiritual house cleansing. If you have disturbing patterns of energy in your home, it could be in the form of you're trying to do a remodel. I have gone to cleanse people's houses because every effort they had put forth and money in remodeling their home, something always happened. A pipe burst, or the paint, whatever. It was just a money pit. And then they brought me in, and I was able to heal whatever was going on with that house. And the repairs just went on seemingly after that. So I've been called in with small children having repeated nightmares because they could see or feel the presence of others in their room. And usually by the time people get to me, it's been going on so long, it does take a lot of healing. And
when is a red flag for you if somebody just casually talks about, oh, I like my ghost, and it's like the ghost only throws dishes out of the cabinet once in a while.
Oh my God. Well, if he can throw a dish, what else could he throw? Yeah, that's, it's funny.
And we're joking, but that's actually true. I mean, those things happen.
They absolutely do happen, and it's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for the discarnate. So this is also a good time to talk about the difference between your grandmother coming to visit for being supportive of you, and somebody who's trapped between the dimensions. So a discarnate is someone who has passed over. They've laid down their physical vehicle, but they haven't made it to their next step in their evolution for whatever reason. And your grandmother has gone to the light or taken her proper place in the creative order and moved on, but now she's come back, perhaps because there's a wedding or a child is born and she wants to lend her presence to the moment and show her support. That's completely fine. That's absolutely wonderful and happens all the time. So somebody who's trapped between the dimensions needs to have a healing so that they can take their proper place and move on. Because what tortures, I know I've been lost in a parking garage for 10 minutes. Those parking garages where all the levels look exactly the same and they have these different numbers on them, but every level looks the same. And it's a little frightening. It's dark. I'm not sure where I am. Am I on the right level? Try that for 100 years after a traumatic experience. And this is, for me, this is what these people are going through. So that's why I consider it a service and a promise to the planet to assist people. Absolutely.
I always tell my clients, after the moment of cleansing, thank you so much for this opportunity to assist and to bringing them into the light, because the clients need to be brave enough to join us.
Absolutely.
We can help them.
It takes a lot of courage to admit, because why we're gathering here also is it's, people, I think it's getting a lot better, but it has always been taboo to speak of such things. I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, I can't tell anybody else this, but this happened to me. What do you think it is? So this is a great opportunity for you to bring your questions to be validated in your experiences.
We actually have another great question. want to get to that before my long list and also some pre-submitted questions. Are most ghosts or spirits who are stuck in this dimension stuck because they have unfinished business or suffered in a violent way? Is there multiple reasons? And I think that's a good question to also, if I may add on to that, a question about what places are really haunted. Is it the cemeteries? Is it the battlefields? Is it the hospitals? It kind of ties into together of how you passed in a way.
It can, but it doesn't have to. So wherever the moment of trauma took place, so in this dimension we have a disease called dementia, right? And
Yeah.
so you see how it sounds like dimensions. So people who have dementia, in my estimation, are lost in the dimensions. They, in their mind, they still have a physical body, but they're not quite sure where the information is coming from that they're getting. So if you have an incredibly traumatic experience and say a very unexpected and quick death, it's quite possible that you don't remember what happened. It's quite possible also that you don't know that you're dead. You don't know. These are a lot of reasons. If you've been on a lot of medication and you've been in a hospital, you may not know the difference between the feeling of being inundated with that drug and actually being on the other side. So there are cemeteries, it's interesting how a lot of people denote, cemeteries are so spooky because, and I would think people are going to meet you where you are. If I were to make an educated guess, I would say the cemetery is not where people are going to hang out. That's not probably where they died. It's not where they had the most traumatic experience. So I would say,
or where they get their fill.
Right. If they have crossed over and the only time that they get to visit with a loved one is when the loved one goes to the cemetery to talk to that loved one, then that entity will go and meet them at the cemetery. But the entities are not hanging around the cemetery all the time because they got better things to do.
They might be hanging around at the grocery store.
I would be hanging around the grocery store because I love
or
to
at the
eat.
pub.
I've
definitely picked up some hitchhikers at the pub.
Okay. I was talking about people who have crossed over and then come back.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. No, okay.
Anyway.
So did you hear the distinction here? Cherie was saying they had crossed over and then come back visiting you at the cemetery. Yes. And then I went jumping in back into the ghost stories where the Discarnate. So if joking and saying that they will be at the grocery store or at the pub, which is absolutely true. And
it's a great question too, because if let's say someone was hung, okay, and that's how they died. Their spirit may not be hanging there. Their spirit may be where the trauma took place, where they actually heard that they were going to be hung, or where they were waiting in the tower to be hung. Wherever the most trauma took place, if they were already numb when they were hung, they're probably not hanging there. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, well, it makes sense to you. Why don't we, we're getting some comments if you guys want to chime in and see if things are making sense here. We're getting some interesting comments here, or interesting as a reflection to that answer. Okay, so we have another question that was pre-submitted. Anne-Sophie wants to know why only old houses are haunted, never new modern ones. People are dying today or not becoming ghosts?
The perception, of course, through Hollywood, and through all of our culture is that all the historic places are the only places where ghosts go. Like there's some sort of ghost town there. And that's actually not true. I have been called into brand new construction. I've been called to historic places. Mm-hmm. I've been called to places where there was no building. So it really does depend, and that is the perception throughout our culture, is that the older the place is, the more ghosts it must pack. Yeah, we're laughing because we have neighborhoods that are less than 20 years old that definitely have a lot of entities in them.
And then, things can rebuild on the place, and it can be brand new, but the trauma on the land is centuries old.
Good point. Yeah, how long has the land been here? How many traumas, how many tears have fallen? For sure. And somebody else asked, you should ask.
No, go ahead.
It's very similar.
Here.
Why is it you only see ghosts in old garb, like they're only old ghosts? Yeah, and that is not true as well. I actually did cleanse a house where the entity was actually a police officer, and he was of modern clothes in like our day. So that's, again, you don't hear about that as much because maybe it's not as dramatic or as fun to talk about. But
join the police officer. He is haunting you.
Terrible.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's in the light and with his family and friends, which is what we want to celebrate. We have a question here live. Can objects be moved by spirit? And she says that she has experienced such happenings. Did this really just happen?
Yes, objects can be moved by spirit.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. They can also, it's really easy for them to play with electronics, which might be why we kind of had a little technical difficulty today, even though we set up our boundaries, we called in the angels. Yes, they can. And if that is happening, I highly recommend, if you don't call me, call someone who has an ability to heal that person to the light. Because if I find it is a lot like someone crying for help when they're moving objects in your house.
Yes, absolutely. And it can be small movement, and you're like second guessing yourself, or it can be a big movement. It doesn't really matter. It moved. That's the whole point.
Wow. Yeah. And if that happens at all, I would definitely look into getting that person to the proper place in the creative order. Because if they can move one object, you could probably move more. And I would just take it at its at the first sighting and definitely contact someone who could help you.
We have another question here coming in. It's in the spiritual realm. How do you tap into a spiritual guide? It's sidetracks from the ghost stories, but if you want to just briefly connect with this.
Into a spirit. So
how do you, I assume this person, maybe you can verify, how do you get to know your spiritual guide?
Oh, okay.
How do you hear your spiritual guide?
So how do you be in alignment with your spiritual guidance? So my understanding is that we have several, so many spiritual guides, and we all have a master guide. And one wonderful way is to meditate. Okay. It's really, in this day and age, it's almost a necessity if you want to have a little bit of space in your life, in your personal spirit, to meditate. You can meditate and actually psychically, silently, if you'd like to, ask your spirit guide to align with you in such a way that you kind of set up a tell for each other. So when you're asking a question, you'll see a color, or you'll hear a ding. I have a ding, and I also have thumbs up, where my guides in my mind's eye will give me a thumbs up. If something is taking place and you're getting an intuition or a psychic tell, and you want to be validated, you can ask your spiritual guide to give you that, so that both of you agree. It's very similar to animal communication, except it's your spirit guide, if you know anything about animal communication. So you both, it's a relationship that will grow. And the more that you validate the things that the intuition that you're getting and the psychic information that comes in, the more you validate that for yourself, the more aligned you're going to become with your spirit guide.
So great question there, and maybe it's a great topic for another live stream that we can do together, or have Amy and Colette joining on that one. It's definitely something that we do regularly as spiritual teacher, but also what we teach in the workshops and stuff like that. So it's a great question, and very possible to do. Everyone can do that. Okay, we have another question. I'm not going to get to my list of questions today. We have a very active crowd here. Yay. What about chills or goosebumps? Ooh.
That is a great question, and I meant to say. So that's another thing when you were saying about why are people, the question of why are people attracted to the haunted house thing. Growing up in the where our house was haunted, there's definitely a change in the pressure in the room, and I definitely get goosebumps. There's a reaction to the high frequency of this other being from this other dimension that affects me physically, whereas we're like the chills and the goosebumps. Mm-hmm. Absolutely a tell that there's somebody else in the room, for sure.
And I often had, before I explored and dove into my psychic abilities on a more conscious plane, definitely had those moments where, I would look at a building and I'm like, I don't know, I do not want to go into that building. And it was just like a wall, like I couldn't even go into it. And it was unfortunate if you had a class in there and you still had to go in there. But, so there are many. I had a lot of, I was very much a 100% empath when I started. And so I had a lot of feelings inside of me, which is, it was difficult to understand why I could have those feelings and that they weren't my own, or they were telltales.
That's another really good point, is when you're experiencing someone's energy that's attached to you that isn't yours. You can experience anxiety, mm-hmm. Depression. Mm-hmm. I've had clients come to me that said, I don't know why, I just feel like drinking, meaning alcohol. Yeah. And we would check and see that they had actually picked up an attachment, which means a spirit who was lost and saw this bright light person and attached to him, and he's following him around. This is not possession. This is simply someone kind of hitchhiking on your energetic body, but it takes a toll. And yes, in this one meditation circle, I cleansed a young man from this. He was his first time in the group, and he was complaining about this. And I said, so, hey, just for heck, how about if I try to, do my thing? Would that be okay? He goes, yeah, sure, whatever, 2 minutes later, his face was it was just beautiful. You could just see this lift off of his face, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, you look like you're 5 years younger. So, yeah, it's a healing for everybody.
Yeah, and it is, and it's an amazing feeling when you know how to assist these earthbound spirits to go into the light, because you can also then go into the building. You can also stay in the house. You can also have a pleasant experience without it.
Yeah.
When you're, and it's stuff that we teach, but also a true honor to assist them to go into the light. Okay, so let's see. Do we have any more questions? Okay. Did you have anything on your mind you wanted to say?
Yeah, I also wanted to say, I know it's spooky and woo, ghosts we're talking about. But there's also, as we were saying, about the people who have crossed over, who have moved on. Perceiving them is not a bad thing. Perceiving any of them is really not a bad thing. What we hope to do is to assist and guide so that people are able to do this safely and with with spiritual clarity and with calm. But I wanted to just tell a quick story about my Uncle Zeke's funeral.
Yeah.
So my Uncle Zeke was a barbershop choir tenor. And I remember his voice like anything, because we used to go to their house for Christmas Eve, and he would stand behind me and sing in my ear. And he had the loudest, most resonant, high tenor voice. Oh my gosh. And in the choir, the director was always trying to hush him because he outsang the whole, his whole tenor group. So anyway.
I wonder where the genes are.
Oh, no. So we'll talk about that later. So bless his heart, he passed away, and I went to his funeral, and we're all there, and I'm about 17, 18. And a group of his barbershop choir had come together for his funeral to sing his favorite song, I Believe. I believe for every drop of rain that falls, a flower grows. So they're singing, and I can't believe my ears, and I just start smiling like I couldn't help it. I felt so filled with joy, and I was really going like this, because I'm smiling at my uncle's funeral. I could hear him singing over all of them. Okay. And then afterwards, I just told my mom, because I wasn't going to tell anybody else. That made me sound crazy. And I said, Mom, I heard Uncle Zeke. I could hear his voice. I could hear him above everybody. And she told Aunt Eleanor, his widow, and some real names. And she said, yeah, I heard him too. So that, for me, that was a message he wanted to tell us, that he was happy, that he made it, and to celebrate his new life. So
that was a wonderful message.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad has been passed for nearly 20 years, and I get lovely messages and from him as well. So we have another question here, I think, if I can look. If you could feel such a presence, how should you react? Because I was afraid, says this person.
Great question. Yeah, how should you react? So imagine we're all walking through energy all the time. I mean, when I go to Walmart, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of other presences, even the physical body. So, but if the person does not have a body, it makes it even more frightening. What I would do in the way that I was taught is I would definitely call upon the Archangel Michael. Regardless of religious affiliation, he is a healer and he's a protector. And he will come with the calling of his name. And he will come between you and any entity that may or may not have any inkling of wanting to do any harm for you. Generally speaking, folks on the other side are just people. They're good people, and just like on this side, they're not so good people. Feeling the presence of someone there, if you're afraid, I would call on the Archangel Michael and do what makes you feel very centered. If you're alone in the room, I would definitely, if you have a religion, I would say a prayer. You could say a prayer for the entity. Would you add anything to that, Erica? We've all experienced it, and it is scary.
It is scary, and I have to say, practice when you know what to do, and it becomes less scary to do it. But also, being afraid is a good thing, because you know that something is up, but you also know that you can have all the knowledge and education and do good and protect yourself.
Yeah, and one of the ways that you can protect yourself is filling yourself up with your own consciousness and your authority. So one of the things I do when I go into folks' house after I house cleanse, is part of the healing, especially for the children, is to have them feel safe and secure and authority. They're the authority in their home. It makes it very less likely for anybody to impede on that if they're filling their house with their joy and who they are. So I have them say their names their full name 3 times standing in the center of their room. And this is a universal kind of calling card. This is my room, and you're filling the room with your consciousness and your faith and your authority. And it makes it much more difficult for anyone to hang around. You get the clear message, you're not to hang around, and you're not welcome, they need to move on. And we also have cleansing techniques, but we're going to save that for the November 4th.
So
this
hour is going too quickly. Yes, we are having an in-person event in Reston, Virginia on November 4th. It's a 3-hour event where we'll continue sharing ghost stories and Q&As and within the safe community. And Cherie will also be teaching some cleansing techniques and talking a little bit more about what to do when you're encountering a ghost and who to call. Ghostbusters! All right. We have a question in advance that asked about spiritual connection, but it was actually spirit connection. So Ken, he was curious about Ken, if they didn't, so you and I know each other, so after we pass, I'm hoping we get to hang out. But if we have never met before, can we still meet up in the afterlife and hang out?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't see why not. I don't have the itinerary right in front of me, but I know that we all do sign up in soul groups.
Yes, we do.
You know, so as above, so below. But I do think that you can meet new people, especially when you are evolving, and just the way that you do here. If you're taking classes here,
yeah,
and you graduate from high school, you're going to meet all different people in the college.
Yeah.
Same above, same below. So if you're more interested in an evolutionary class in consciousness and expanding your mind and heart, you're going to meet new people on whatever new level you're jumping to. And that doesn't mean you won't meet the other folks in another class, but we're organic beings, and it's all about your intent. Where you're going is your design, your master design. And I think that's a brilliant question, really.
Yeah, and I mean, we're assigned jobs, and depending on what we do and our abilities, we are assigned different jobs. And I remember the beautiful thing when I was expecting Mason, my son, who's now at over two. I was told through Colette, actually, who my dad was coming through for her. She's not a medium of choice, but she was able to talk to my dad about who wanted to come through and give me some pregnancy advice. And anyways, he had shared that he met Mason before he jumped into and was conceived. So that's a soul group, of course, but it was beautiful because that was a spirit-to-spirit connection that was happening.
Absolutely.
Beyond the veil.
Oh, what a beautiful example.
We have another sharing here. My mother came to me the evening of her death. I saw her and heard her, but no words were spoken. Was this a product of my deep grief, or was she able to return to me briefly? Oh. I'm getting
goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps.
Yes.
That's another tale of truth.
Yes.
Your mother definitely came
Absolutely.
to you. Absolutely, she did.
And it doesn't have to be any words when there's that presence of that, just that emotional presence of being present. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, and that she was thinking so much of you as she was making that transition, and that she could make that visit is amazing. So wow, what a blessed memory you have. Yes, that was your mom.
Yes, that
for
was
sure.
Sometimes, and maybe if you do this, it will happen again. But sometimes I go, hey, I want to can you visit me in my dream tonight? And, you know, it can be a little invitation for them to join us. It's a little easier for them to be in dream state than bringing down and communicating into the present, the awakened state, because it takes a lot of effort for spirits to bring it down to our level. We have to do a lot of work to join them and help them out. But in the dream state, we're a little bit more fluid. So did you already share the other uncle story?
No, I didn't.
Why don't we jump back into a ghost story?
Okay. Yes, I was about 5 or
Got
6.
15 minutes left, I think.
Okay, I was about 5 or 6, and we were living in this big old southern mansion in Houston, Texas, and it had a garage separate from the house and a workshop. And so I shouldn't have really been in there, but I went into the workshop and I saw this quite beautiful black woman with a white dress, white apron, white cap, standing in the corner of the room. And she was just staring right at me. And she had rosy cheeks and big brown eyes. And I was kind of stunned by her presence because she looked so sad and she was looking directly at me. So I turned around and went out, and I went to find my mom in the house, and I told her what I had seen. And she listened, and by the time we got back to the workshop, she was gone. So later that evening, my Uncle Harold came home from work, and my mom told him the story about what I saw. And he sat down and he said, "Oh my gosh, that's why I can't go in there and work anymore. I always feel like someone's staring at me." And he said that his maid lived in the apartment above the garage at one point, and 2 people broke into the apartment and tried to, well, they did steal her money, but they gagged her, and she swallowed the gag and choked to death. And he said that's exactly who I described. And of course, I had no way of knowing that. I was like 5 or 6. So I really felt looking back now, I really feel for that soul who had such a traumatic experience and then remained attached to that place. So saying prayers for her now.
We're going to talk about like the differences between certain things. You've already mentioned it, but we had a question about spiritual guides, and
yes.
And I wanted to share a story where, so if you can just, again, for people joining us today, right now, or listening to this later, the difference between a master guide and a ghost. So
you mean someone who, okay, so a ghost and being a discarnate and somebody who's crossed over.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
And well, a master guide can also be somebody who's never been here.
Okay.
So my story is when Mason was born, you know, when you're up all night breastfeeding and, you know, it's dark and, it's at night, so you're a little,
You should be exhausted.
Yes, you're exhausted and you're a little afraid of the dark. And I kept feeling this presence until I realized a few weeks later that I was actually feeling Mason's master guide who was joining us. And of course, I had not felt Mason's master guide before. And I didn't connect the two. That was a spiritual guide and not somebody who a PH1 discarnate in my house. So but it made me nervous, and it was, before I knew, it was the same feeling of like, is there a ghost in here? Or discarnate.
Right. So we have all kinds of tools where we can actually discern the difference between. So a master guide, not necessarily have to be human, but often are, and they are not going to take on another life if they have, because they're with you from the moment that you breathe forth from the mouth of God. and they are your highest alignment to the divine, whatever that might mean for you. So, and they do have a presence, so that's pretty amazing. That's really neat that you could feel Mason's master guidance. So the difference between that and a discarnate?
Yeah, one that is stuck.
Okay, so for those who are just joining us, the discarnate would be somebody a human who has now shed his physical body. He's dead, but he hasn't been able, for whatever reason, to move on. So he's literally stuck in between dimensions. If you've ever been trapped on an elevator between floors for any amount of time, you know it's very disconcerting. And the reality that these people have passed in, as time moves on, they kind of they have their own form of dimension where they have only the memory of perhaps their death or the family where they were, and they might even be attached to a house because that's where their family last was, and they want to be with their family, and they don't know how to get to the light or to make that next transition point.
Yeah, great explanation. And then moving on to what's the difference between a poltergeist and a ghost?
So a poltergeist is actually can be more okay. Hardball, is that what you're telling me? Well, my understanding of poltergeist is actually a haunting, right? Is that what we're talking about? Where it's an active, where they're throwing things around. Well, a poltergeist is a ghost with not great intent and disturbing energy patterns and wanting, in fact, to cause conflict for those who are around. I don't highly recommend having poltergeists in your house. I think you should get your house cleansed as soon as possible. And yet I have actually talked to people who've said, oh, it hasn't happened in a long time, so it's going to be okay. Or a lady called into the radio show just the other day, and I don't remember her name, so I won't say it, but she said it. And she has a ghost of what she perceives to be a little girl in her home that can move things around. But she said, oh, she's my protector. And she said that she had a special hat for her grandson that she had bought, and they wanted that hat back. It disappeared. And so she told the little ghost before she left in the morning, I want that hat back. And when she came back, the hat was on the kitchen floor. I don't find that charming. Maybe you're perceiving her as a little girl, and ghosts and poltergeists can be perceived in lots of different ways. They can disguise themselves. So I'm just saying, if she can move a hat, wow. I don't think it's charming. I really think you should probably contact someone and help this person move to the other side.
Then segueing into just real quick on psychic hygiene and why is it important to know about ghosts, discarnates, the differences between master guides, poltergeists, etc., to experience spiritual clarity and inner calm?
What a great question. So, well, we had a lot of people that actually had really great questions about feeling presences, having someone who is an uninvited, invisible guest in your home move things. This is all part of our worlds that we live in. Ghosts on the other side are for realsies. And the reason we need to know about this is A, because we all really somewhere within us already know this, and B, to expand our consciousness so we can adapt appropriately. So cleansing techniques, if in fact you have propensity, as I do and you have in the past, as an empath, to attract folks to you, then you really want to have a cleansing technique so that you don't have to live with 100 people crowded in your little apartment or your house who don't have bodies. And these techniques can be anywhere from simply a lot of you know about sage, the white sage, where the Native Americans burn the sage and then they bring the smoke through and over all the objects. Also, you can do this for yourself with your own intent. So say you've had a hard day at the office and you're coming home and you're exhausted, but you just feel this sort of static pulsing energy around you. I don't know if anybody's experienced that. I have. And you can just take anything or even your empty hand and imbue this with the power of cleanse and clear. I'll usually say light of God, and then I will take this and I will just cleanse all over.
We gotta move in with the video. Woo!
Like this. All over yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. Every all over your aura with the high intent and release and let go of all non-vital energies and entities. You don't have to say my words, but the point is you go all over and literally you will actually peel off and have all of these energies just dissipate from you. Psychic hygiene is important because energy never ceases. It's everywhere you want to be.
Yeah.
We're swimming in it all the time. We take showers every day because of the physical dust and dirt. But that's another good thing. When you're in the shower, you can actually imbue the shower with rainbow colors. Imagine psychically with your mind's eye that the rainbow colors are just neutralizing and releasing all of the non-vital energies. I let go of all that I don't need. You know, you can say it as simply as that. And just this conscious effort with your intent can cleanse you of any of those unwanted energies.
So we're about to wrap up. If you guys have any questions you want to share, this is the time to do that. If you have enjoyed this short conversation, it has gone by pretty fast. You may enjoy our in-person event on November 4th between 1 and 4 p.m. in Reston, Virginia. We'll be talking more in depth. We'll be sharing more ghost stories, more in depth about cleansing techniques, and we'll save all of the questions here that we didn't get to for that event. You'll take even more of a deep dive in your personal and professional experiences.
Yes,
and sharing more.
And if you bring an attachment or a ghost, you will not be leaving with them.
Correct. There's some good cleaning happening as well. Some great spiritual cleansing during that event as well. Let me see if I've missed anything. We'll also serve up refreshments and laughter. Go figure.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
So thank you so much. If you've enjoyed this, feel free to share the video, the live stream with your news feed, or send in an email or a direct message to somebody who might enjoy this or benefit from hearing this conversation. We love for you to join whitenackros.com and join our list. And we have several more upcoming events that are fundraising events for our, but also free, like this live stream, before to save up funds for providing you with the best products and services that we can before we launch. So thank you so much for attending.
Thank you.
Loved having and being here and
telling ghost stories
in
a safe and sacred space.
Safe and in sacred space, and without being scared to death and leaving your body or being under the influence. Well, I hope some of you had some good wine tonight. But I'm talking about, during ghost hauntings or wineries where they have ghosts and stuff like that.
It's out of control.
And I have to say, if you are attending one of those ghost hauntings and you see Cherie, there are no ghosts there.
You
or
do
myself.
go on.
Because there's we don't mess around. We can't handle that. that stuff.
As long as we have permission.
As long as we have permission, and they may be attached to something that we're not allowed to move. So thank you so much. Let me see if we have any questions, last minute questions. Again, sorry about the technical difficulties, but
Well, for a first time, this was
worked out.
not too bad.
Thanks, Sheree.
Thank you, Erica.
Yay. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.